Welcome back, everyone. For today's video, we are going to be taking a look at the next set of matches in the Freestyle Chess Grand Slam Tour. Now, I had a very tough loss yesterday against Yavokir Sindarov from Uzbekistan, which took me out of the running for first through fourth place, but nonetheless, the show goes on, and I'm still in the running to play for fifth through 8th place. Now today I start a new classical match against the current world chess champion, Gukesh Dommaraju from India, who lost a very tough first match to Fabiano Caruana. So even though I lost yesterday, I actually get a tougher match. Alright, so without further ado, let's jump right into the action. Now, as always, we are playing Fischer Random Chess with a random setup on the back rank, and we have a new position once again. Now, in this game, I open with the move g4, and this is probably the only position that I've played in the tournament so far where between myself and the other top grandmasters who analyzed, we really were not sure what the best move was even after spending our 10 minutes. Now, the move that I advocated for was g4. I also thought f4 was an interesting first move as well, maybe even a move like c3. Ultimately, all of us who started playing in the second round with the white pieces took quite a bit of time. Now, Fabiano initially played the move pawn to f3 against Yavokir Sindarov. We had another game, which I think featured the move knight to b3 between Firouzja and Noterbeck. And then Vincent Keimer played the move g4 against Magnus Carlsen. So, I saw all these first moves before I played my first move, and ultimately, I decided to play the move g4 like Vincent against Magnus. The game continues with the move knight b6 from Gukesh, and now I play the move pawn to f4. Now, what I'm trying to do here is take some space on the king side. I have the rook on the f file, the queen on the g file, and eventually I want to develop the knight or the bishop behind these pawns. Here, Gukesh plays the move f5 here, and now I trade the pawns on f5, and I play the move c3, opening up the scope for the bishop to target the rook and potentially the pawn on h7. Gukesh plays rook f8, and now I play the move pawn to f5. Now, one of the oddities about this position is that from the get-go, both sides can potentially castle, so I could castle here. Same thing applies to black, where black can castle as well to the queen side. So because of that, what I decide to do here is I want to reserve the right to castle for as long as possible, and therefore I'm going to try to bring my knights out very quickly. So I play the move f5, and as you probably will notice, computer says this is a slight inaccuracy. Apparently, after the move castles, let's say black were to castle and white plays the move bishop g3, computer gives white a very serious advantage here. It's saying it's around 0.6, which to me is just shocking, because honestly, when I saw this position, much like the other players, I thought this was pretty close to even. So I play the move f5 here instead, and my goal is very simple. When I go for f5, I want to dominate this horse on h8 so that it can no longer go to the g6 square. Now here, Gukesh plays the move g6, and this is an excellent move. It's the only move in the position after which black is not significantly worse. Let's say black were to castle here, for example. After the move bishop to h4, suddenly I'm putting a ton of pressure on this diagonal towards this pawn and the rook as well. So Gukesh plays the move g6, trying to eliminate this pawn on f5, but also he wants to free the knight so it can come to the g6 square. Here I play the move knight to b3, and now Gukesh plays bishop f7, and here I play the move bishop h4. Now, around this point in the game, both of us have spent a lot of time already, nearly 35 minutes each, and I had this sense, the sensation of the je ne sais quoi, where I felt like I should be better, but I just couldn't figure it out. Now remember, I've struggled with my time usage in this event so far, so I also don't want to burn too much time, and that's why I make a very practical decision here to simply play the move bishop to h4. Now Gukesh takes the pawn on f5. He does not try to get greedy and grab a pawn on the queen side with this bishop capture and then the queen taking the pawn, because after bishop c2, let's say black were to take another pawn. Now after pawn takes pawn, suddenly black has huge issues on this f file. Let's say black were to trade, for example, and play a move like knight c4, just to show you a hypothetical. There is queen to f8, creating the classic ice skater checkmate of the king on d8. So after bishop h4, Gukesh decides to take the pawn on f5, and now I trade the queens on g8, and I play the move bishop f5. Now, it's a very, very symmetrical pawn structure here. Both of us have pawns on the exact same files, but one big difference here is that my double op combo, the two Bs here on f5 and h4, are simply much more active than the black Bs. The bishop on g8 and b8 are simply very passive here, so I'm banking on the activity of these two Bs to give me an advantage. So Gukesh plays the move knight g6, and now I play the move bishop g5, and Gukesh plays the move c5. Now here the one big issue Gukesh has potentially is this weak pawn on e7. If black were to castle, for example, after knight g3, let's just say black plays a move like a6, and white goes king c2, black will struggle to guard the pawn. If you play c6, I will simply trade and take the pawn on e7. And if you play the move rook d to e8, for example, now white can go knight c5, hitting these pawns on b7 and d7, as well as the pawn on e7. So Gukesh plays the move c5 here, and this is an excellent move. I actually was expecting Gukesh to play the move c6 here, trying to avoid any pressure on the diagonal and open up the scope for the bishop, but the computer actually likes the move c5. Now I play the move knight to g3, important move here because if I were to castle, black can actually get greedy and grab the juicer on h2, and now black has this extra pawn on h7. So I play knight g3 here, black can't capture the pawn, and the knight supports the bishop on f5. Gukesh trades the bishop for the knight, he plays bishop e6, and now I play the move g4, reinforcing the bishop on f5. Gukesh plays knight e5, and now I decide to play the move king c2. Now, during the game, I was very unsure whether I should play king c2 or castle the king. Ultimately, I just decided to move the king. I didn't see a huge difference, but it's worth pointing out that I should have castled because after castles, if black tries to play rook g8, like in the game, this is a mistake because now after bishop to h4 is played here, white is a little bit better. So I go king c2, we get rook g8, I play bishop h4, and now we get the move bishop takes bishop. Now the reason that this is actually a little bit different is I should go back for 1 second. If we get this position after bishop to h4, I realize I didn't complete the thought, is that now if black were to take the bishop on f5 here, after g takes f5 and a move like d6 in this position, after f6, king d7 takes a knight d5, it's going to look very similar to the game. But after a move like rook to f5, b6 here, I think with the king on c1, there's a slight difference. I forget exactly what it is. I think it's mainly that at some point after rook g7, white can play d4 here, and the knight can never go to e3, creating a fork of the rook and the king. So back to the game. We get this position after bishop h4, Gukesh trades, plays d6, and now I play the move f6. Now, it is imperative that I push this f-pawn up the board, because if I play a move like rook to h1, and black gets the king to d7, and let's say knight to d5 here, black can potentially end up better with these knights in the middle of the board, as well as the idea of going rook to f8 to target the pawn on f5. So I go f6. Gukesh plays king d7, I take the pawn, and now he plays move knight d5. Now at this point, I am temporarily up a pawn on e7, but with these knights in the middle of the board, it's simply not easy to prove an advantage. So I play rook to f5, Gukesh goes rook g7, and now I play this move rook to h1. Now keep in mind, the line I mentioned earlier with castles, you'll see why it would have been better, because here if I play d4, knight to e3 forks the king and the rook. So I play this move rook to h1, and this is probably the critical moment in the game when I could have proven an advantage here. There is the move rook to f8, and after rook to e8 is played, white can play this move pawn to e4, attacking the knight on d5, and after the move knight to g6, takes, and the move knight to a5 here, white is apparently better. It's not winning here, but white will have an advantage. Now, this is a very deep line. The idea of playing knight to a5 and this whole thing simply eluded me, and that's why I played the move rook to h1. Now, what I'm hoping to get here is a situation where I have a better pawn structure. Let's say black were to take on e7, and I get rook h5 here. You'll notice that black has this weak pawn on the h file, which I can target. Meanwhile, I have my 5 pawns all connected here. So black has 4 pawns connected, but due to this weak pawn on h7, I should have an advantage. So I play rook h1. Gukesh plays the move b6 here, and this is an all-star move from Gukesh because it may not look like it does anything consequential, but it does 2 very important things. First thing is the pawn overprotects this pawn on c5. The second thing it does is it stops the knight from ever going to a5. So here I play the move e4, and this move is probably okay, but after this move, it feels like the game is headed towards a draw. Now, the move that I think I should have played is move knight to c1 here, because now if black were to take on e7 after rook to h5 and this move knight to g8, now in this position I can play bishop g5, and my pawns are actually very nicely placed here. The knight guards them all. I don't know what I want to call this formation, but I should have the advantage due to this weakness on h7. Instead, I play the move e4, Gukesh takes, I play rook h5, and now after the move knight g8, I play bishop g5, but here black can very smoothly play the move king c6. Now, the big difference between this position and the other one is that with this pawn on e4 here, now the knight can jump to c4, black can also jump to f3, and I cannot take the pawn on h7 as I would lose the bishop. The other big issue I have here is, let's just say I play a3 just to illustrate a point. At some point, black can try to go knight f6 here, forking the rook and the pawn. Now, if this pawn were back on e2, that would not be an issue, but I have pushed it forward. So after king c6, I play this move d4. At this point, I was already starting to feel a little bit of time pressure creeping up on me, and I felt like it was time to start simplifying the position to make a draw. So even though black has a weakness on h7, I actually would argue that white is the one who has to be a little bit careful here. We get this move knight to c4, and now I play the move pawn to e5. Now, the reason I play this move is that it leads to a massive simplification of pawns here, and I thought that there would be no risk of losing. Now, I could have played a move like d5, but this would have been very committal because after king to b5, now suddenly the pawns can get blockaded very easily. If black gets this knight to e5 or even this rook to e8, suddenly I think that only black can be better. So I end up playing the move e5, we get pawn takes pawn, I trade on c5, and now I play the move knight to d2. Gukesh goes knight d6, and now after bishop to e3, you'll notice that black will not be able to guard both the pawns on e5 and h7, and additionally on the queen side, now I will have a 3-on-2. So we get rook to e8, I take on h7, and now Gukesh plays rook g2, and here I play the move king c1. Now at this point, my pawn structure is very slightly better with a 3 versus 2 on the queen side, but black does have this e-pawn, and if black can get the pawn rolling up the middle of the board, there are chances for black to create counterplay and or potentially win the game. So we get the move rook to e7 from Gukesh here. This move is maybe not a bad move per se, but the computer wants to move knight to e7 with the idea of jumping to either d5 or f5 with these knights, and apparently black is better. Instead, we get rook e7, I play the move rook h2, Gukesh plays rook g7, and now I play the move rook h5. Now, one thing that I realized at this point in the game is that, true to form, Gukesh was not happy to simply make a draw here. If Gukesh was ready to make the draw, he would have traded the rooks and played the move knight to f6 here with knight g4 and knight d5, and there's very little chance for either side to do a whole lot. Because after bishop g5, let's say we get rook f7, takes, for example, and something like king d1, due to the limited material on the board and the same number of pawns, there is just no shot for either side to win. But when Gukesh plays rook to g7, I can tell that he's trying to play both the game, but also on the clock as well. Now here I play the move rook to h5. Nothing wrong with this move, but the computer actually very slightly prefers the trade and then rook to h5 here. Ultimately, I rejected this because I thought that after the move, I believe it was after the move king to d5, I simply didn't see any way to be better after c4 and king to e6. Additionally, if I were to play bishop takes pawn, black can sack the rook here, and after takes, knight e4, king e3 takes, b4, and knight d7. I wasn't actually sure whether I was better in this endgame with the 3 pawns. So I play the move rook to h5. Gukesh goes rook e7, and now I play the move rook to f1, trying to dominate this knight on g8 so that it cannot jump into the action. Gukesh plays rook e6, and now I play bishop g5, further trying to stop this knight from getting in, and now Gukesh plays the move pawn to a6. Here I play the move rook to e1, Gukesh goes knight f7, and now I play the move knight to e4. Now at this point, you'll notice that I'm a little bit low on time here, but I already felt that there was no chance to ever lose the game, and with this great knight on e4, targeting the pawn on c5, and the fact that black has 3 pawn islands or 3 wide peepos, I thought maybe from a practical standpoint, I could try to win the game. So we get knight to d6. Here I trade the knights, and now I play the move pawn to c4. Nothing wrong with this move, but I think in retrospect, I should have played the move bishop to e3. Instead, I go c4, Gukesh plays rook g4, I play b3, and now we get the move knight to e7. Here I play the move rook to d1, we get rook d4, and now I play rook g1. Now, there's nothing wrong with this last sequence of moves, but at this point, I already was so low on time that I thought that it was time to end the game. So we get knight c6, and now I play the move bishop to e3, and this is a move which is simply inaccurate. Now, the computer wants to move rook to h7, and I did very briefly consider this, but I was very worried about rook g6 creating a pin of the bishop and the rook on g1, and additionally, even something like rook to d3 followed by knight to d4 with forks on e2 or f3. So, with limited time, considering what I've done over the past couple of days, it felt like it was time to simply end the game. So I play bishop e3, we get rook d3, rook d1, we get the trade, and now Gukesh plays rook g6. Here I play the move king to e2, and this is a move that was simply not correct. Now, the initial idea that I want to go for is rook to h6, forcing the rooks off the board, and after knight d4, check king c6, and king d2, this position will be a draw almost no matter what. I think even if white somehow is able to win this pawn, it still probably is going to end up in a draw here. Maybe not this exact position, but even if I get 3 versus 2, it shouldn't be decisive. So then I decided, let's go king to e2, trying to run the king to the center. But now Gukesh plays move knight b4, and this is a situation where it gets very awkward because I'm down to 50 seconds on the clock here, and I've been struggling low on time, but I also don't have an obvious move. So I play the move a3. Gukesh goes knight c2, and now I play this move rook to h8 with 5 seconds on the clock. Now, luckily at this point in the game, it is not possible to completely blunder. Even king d3 or king f3 would draw, but I play rook h8 instead. Now, at this point in the game, Gukesh decides it's time to call it a day. He doesn't see a way to continue on, and he takes the bishop. Now, the funny thing is the computer actually thinks after knight to d4, for example, king d3, and knight takes b3, maybe black, since he's up a pawn, can try to play for more. I thought that after rook to d8, king c7, and rook d5, this should be enough, and apparently it is enough to draw the game. So Gukesh decides to play knight takes bishop, and after the trade of the bishop for the knight here with the same number of pawns on the board, the game will be a draw no matter what. Gukesh checks, I go king up, he takes, I check, he goes back, I take this one, and now he plays king b7, I play rook e6, he takes, and I go king d5, trying to eliminate this pawn on c5. Gukesh plays e4, I take the pawn, he goes rook h3, and now I decide to end the game by repetition. I don't see any reason to continue playing on. Of course, I could always take this pawn and symbolically claim that I have a rook and pawn versus a rook, but this game will be a draw. Black will sit forever on the 5th rank, and whenever I push the pawn forward, you come down and you start checking the king from behind. So I decided to just force a repetition. No need to waste an extra 10-15 minutes. The game will be a draw no matter what. Don't want to pull a reverse Noterbeck, and it ends peacefully. So this was a very interesting game. Unlike the other games that I played against Sindarov, this game was for the most part very quiet, very balanced. There was maybe 1 or 2 moments, like 1 or 2 moves where I had a chance to maybe prove an advantage, but overall, it never had wild swings the way that all my other games in the event have had so far. So from that standpoint, it's quite nice. Obviously, it's a little disappointing not to win, but at the end of the day, it was a balanced game, and it was hard fought by both players. So what does that mean? That means that the match is tied. Both Gukesh and I have half a point. Our first game is a draw. Tomorrow we come back with the colors reversed, and of course, a completely new position in freestyle, where we will play the second game of the match in a classical time format. So tomorrow, if the game is a draw, we will have the dreaded tiebreakers. If I win, I'm through to the final match for 5th and 6th place. Of course, if Gukesh wins, he is through to play that match instead of me. So it should be pretty exciting, but at any rate, I hope you guys have enjoyed this recap from the 3rd day of the knockout portion of the Freestyle Chess Grand Slam Tour. If you are not already subscribed to the channel, make sure that you smash that subscribe button below, and I'll be back with some more recaps. I do apologize, of course, for my recap being late, but I did play Title Tuesday. I drew Magnus. Maybe I'll do a recap of that game as well at some point soon, but I hope you guys can be a little bit understanding of why it's so late, and I'll see you guys all tomorrow. So I hope you enjoyed it, and have a great rest of your evening. Bye.